Hello, everyone. Today I had the opportunity to sit down and have a great conversation with the Honorable Mark Saliba, Mayor of Dothan, Alabama. We covered many topics, but the subjects we covered, we were able to talk about the character and some of the history of Dothan, why it's in that sweet spot of being a small town where families can feel comfortable and safe, but also large enough where people, entrepreneurs and businesses can really have great success. We talked a little bit about his history and his story and the process that God uses in his providence to shape and mold a person to take on that responsibility. And then a few more questions to talk about the wisdom needed to navigate all the different concerns and the decision making that one needs to do in order to create orderly spaces where humans can thrive. Anyway, join us. I guess we can begin this way.
Sure.
I really appreciate your willingness to come and talk to me. And being here, it seemed like it's flown by, but I've been here, 6 months?
Okay.
And still getting accumulated, acclimated, getting to know the community. But I'll just kind of premise it with this. I spoke yesterday for my birthday. A friend of mine from my own hometown gave me a call. I was asking, because he still lives in my old hometown of Redding, California.
Yes.
And I said, how is it? I haven't been back there in years. And I asked him, has Redding, because it's so far north, so far north that San Francisco, all that is a entirely different world. I said, is it far enough north? Has it been spared a lot of what we oftentimes see in the news negatively about California? Mm-hmm. He said, lamented, no. He says, all that has come into Redding. And you always know that you can't go home because you changed since you left.
Yeah.
But you always hope that at least home would be a good place to visit and at least reminisce and see. He says, no, the homeless problem, a lot of other ways in which you see about in the news about California politics has filtered its way into that. And so as a result, this feels like my hometown I grew up in.
Yeah.
Redding would not,
yeah.
But Dothan does. And so, and they're starting to have a couple of listeners that obviously our church, but some that are even outside of the area.
Okay.
And when they try to ask me, well, what's Dothan like? I said, I tell you what, I'm starting to ask people, and they're telling me stories about Dothan. And so it's such a blessing to have you here. I'm wondering, there's a couple of things I'm hoping that we can accomplish in time without taking up too much of your time. One, I'm hoping you're willing to kind of be somewhat of a Dothan slash historian and advertising agency for a moment to kind of tell us a little bit about the history and the character of the town.
Yes.
And then after that, I'm hoping that we can go into a little bit of your story. Because I think it's important to think about what a process God takes someone through in order to bring them to a place of responsibility for others like this.
Yeah.
Solomon, when he was younger, he was inspired by God to ask for whatever he wants, and instead of wealth, he asked for wisdom.
Yes.
And I'm really curious as to the process that God puts someone through in order to take on the responsibility of creating orderly places where people can thrive.
Yes.
That's something I think people would benefit from.
Absolutely.
And then after that, maybe there's a few more things we could, topics that will come up along the way. But I'm wondering if you would sell us on Dothan, really, just for starters.
Well, first off, I would say, just so you have a timeline, I turned 65 this year.
Okay.
And was born and raised in Dothan, Alabama. So I've been here. My father was born and raised in Dothan, Alabama. My grandfather came over from Lebanon, and so immigrated here and brought three other. My great-grandfather brought three other brothers with him. So all the Salibas are from four brothers that came over when they were, barely in their 18 and 20 years old.
Okay.
So Dothan has a great history of diversity because most of the founding families that have been here have come from, different places in the world.
Right.
As just like mine. And so they came here to find a place where they could assimilate in, where they could be entrepreneurial and innovative in spirit, work hard, and create a really great place for family.
Okay.
And so I would say that over the last 65 years in my lifetime, and I think that's what we all have to kind of do is see, what our story is, how we have fit in, and what is the next chapters
Okay.
for subsequent generations that are coming. And so when I was born in 1960 here in Dothan, Alabama, we have that Ross Clark Circle.
Okay.
Everyone lived within that side, the Ross Clark Circle. You got outside of the Ross Clark Circle, you were in farmland.
Okay.
And so, the growth in one lifetime, my lifetime, has been tremendous. And so, to some degree, we are a much larger city. So, we went from in the 20s and 30,000 people to 71, 72,000 in the city proper.
Okay.
Now, be all that as it may, I'm still, as they say in the country, as the crow flies, only 2 miles from where I was born.
Really? Okay.
On Rosemont Drive. And so, just straight across, over Westgate and our Westgate Park, I live, right over there now. So 65 years later, even though our city has grown, we still have that small city feel.
Right.
And so that I think that part of my advertisement and my advocacy for the city of Dothan is we continue to improve on our quality of life and the things that answers the big question of what is there to do tonight. To also,
right.
like everybody wants to know that, whether you're 16 or 66 and older, and over the more than that, it is, hey, what is it that we want to improve our quality of life on at this particular point? We are the 8th largest city in the state of Alabama.
Okay.
There's 465 cities in the state of Alabama. I just was president of the Alabama League of Municipalities, which is our association for cities and towns in the state. And so we are where we are. We're pretty unique because we're not one of the I-65 cities.
Right.
We don't have a major university in our town. We're not Tuscaloosa or Auburn, and we're all down here in the southeast corner. But we're the 8th largest. So what that speaks to a little bit is the entrepreneurial spirit, the hardworking, good people that are here in this town that do care and do have a lot of compassion and passion for life and for others as well. And I think that has been a blessing. The a little bit of the feel of being isolated from the state a little bit has created us to not see limits. So city limit lines and county limit lines and Wiregrass area, we have to work together and collaborate. And so I think there's something unique there as well. If you talk to any company that's migrated from another part of the country to here, they'll almost always tell you that the reception they have gotten here between the city, the Chamber of Commerce, the county, and other entities is unique and is different.
Okay.
And we've been doing it for a lifetime. It's not something that's just new. We knew we had to do that. So that's a little bit about who we are.
Okay.
But we are a family-oriented town that's growing, that wants you to feel like you have the opportunities in a bigger city, but you still feel like you're a small town.
Okay. When you talk about living with 2 miles away from where you grew up, I will say someone who's a nomad like myself, boy, that is really the greener grass. That one who's moved too much longs for that stationary life, and is just like, I would love to be in one spot forever. And the idea that you would have a community where someone would want to be there for multiple generations.
Sure.
I mean, that's really, I would say that's a measure of wealth almost.
Well, it's a measure of a certain type of wealth and value to your life. Yes, I mean, I have such strong nostalgic feelings for the city and where I grew up on Rosemont and or on another street that I lived, that I'm like waiting for that house to go up for sale so I can buy it again. And just, because it's just that feel of, I love where my roots have been.
So in that sweet spot where you have the opportunities and the entrepreneurial opportunities of a larger city, but you still have that family-oriented small town feel, is there something of a sweet spot to be in where if you start getting bigger than that, you're risking losing some of that character?
Yes, I would say that is the inherent risks of the evolution of a city.
Right?
If you wrote a book and it was entitled "The Evolution of a City," you would you would almost always find that as a city got to a certain population size, it became harder and harder to care for each individual in your city
Right.
and make sure that they have those equal opportunities and chances and hope of being able to do whatever that they would like to achieve in their lives. And so, a lot of times, what you see when a city gets to be a certain size, they become less of a residential city, and people start moving outside of the city limits. They long for that sweet spot
Right.
that they may have lost, but they want to be close enough to some of the things that you can offer in a larger city.
Okay.
And so you trade off a little bit as it gets bigger. So that is a worry of mine.
Right.
Is pouring enough resources into our youth and making sure people feel safe.
Right. My research archaeologically was a little bit on urbanism,
Mm-hmm.
and we talked about the evolution of major urban centers over time and how they change in character. My research specifically had to do with shared ritual, and ancient cities of ancient Mexico had these large public works projects that for shared ritual, and then once those reached their carrying capacity, now you're restraining how many people wanted to be there because they couldn't all worship in the same space. And now, I think the modern crossover to that is the ways when you're looking at public works projects and ways to try to create common space, places where people can gather and have something of a character of the town in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
I know architecture and public character aren't necessarily quantifiable, but I know, like for example, the new city hall is being built,
Right.
and I was curious about how those type of projects, the ways in which your revitalization of the downtown area,
Right.
what's the expectation of what that will do in terms of keeping the character and the spirit of the town?
Well, for one, the downtown revitalizations, I think, are an imperative part of the evolution of a city.
Okay.
If they die and become places that are not safe and or deteriorate in their buildings,
Right.
it's almost like an illness from within inside your body that then
Mm-hmm.
progresses to the outer limbs and then it gets sicker and sicker. And so I think that it's a big part of how we keep our city thriving. The other thing is, where we are within that 3 or 4 or 5 block area of what we consider downtown.
Uh-huh.
That is the actual birthplace of our city.
Okay.
So, again, going back to my heritage, my great grandfather's first store when he came over in the late 1890s, early 1900, is only a block from where City Hall is now.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay.
So we emanated from out within our downtown area. So neighborhoods were birthed, and businesses came along the wrong side of the neighborhoods in the downtown area, and then our first neighborhood got developed, and on so forth and so forth. And so it's part of our city and our growth. But I think that speaks to a revitalization, a revival of who we are, how we got to where we are today, and being in that downtown area.
Okay.
So that's important, I think.
So yeah. So when the town I grew up in, there was downtown was cut through the middle by the Sacramento River,
Mm-hmm.
and it created two halves of
Mm-hmm.
Reading. The area that was considered Reading proper, which was on the west side of the Sacramento River, but I-5, once it was constructed, went through the east side of town,
Mm-hmm.
and the commercial center of gravity really shifted
Mm-hmm.
over to I-5.
Mm-hmm.
And so as a result, it was very, very difficult to keep the downtown area a place where businesses wanted to stay, keep clean, keep updated and beautiful architecture.
Mm-hmm.
Where's the commercial center of gravity for Dothan? Where would you say that is now?
Well, our growth of our city has continued to be in a northwesternly, direction.
Okay.
And so, from our Highway 231 to 84, 80, going out west to 52, it's been a northwest growth. Now, there's a lot of theories and reasons why that may have been that way or why that is that way.
Okay.
I think a lot of times it's because of where the people that are coming into your area to do business, either during the week, are coming from. So
Okay.
from Montgomery and or from Atlanta, Columbus, in that area from down 431.
Okay.
So our growth has been out northwest. And so, and I always tell the story that, as I'm a home builder by trade, residential contractor, and so, a long time ago, 30 years ago, there was a terminology, and it came out of the National Association of Home Builders called smart growth.
Okay.
Now, we're a pretty fiercely independent group of people,
Right.
and so we don't like to be told where we can and can't build. And I thought, smart growth, they're just getting into my business.
Right.
And so, it's like, but now as I have grown and matured, and now wearing a different hat as
Right.
mayor as well, I see the benefits of a growth that's within our whole city that just doesn't go in one direction. One, it makes better sense, for the cost of it,
Okay.
to keep it in a central location and then going out in all directions. If your infrastructure has to continue to go in one direction,
Right. Mm-hmm.
if your emergency responses has to go out in another direction, it's just expensive. So it makes good sense to grow our city in all directions. I will say, back to your question too about urban planning and how do you decide what goes in what area and all. I think that you really ought to take your city and your town and look at neighborhoods.
Okay.
And try to cordon off chunks of neighborhoods in a big group so that it's that proverbial taking a bite out of the elephant. If you really want to tackle it, because a lot of the neighborhoods have a different feel. Some are more residential, some are more commercial, some
Right.
are blended, some have different challenges. And so I think it behooves us a lot of times to look at neighborhoods and the community assets that they have within that neighborhood.
Okay.
And you get a better buy-in and feel from the people in your neighborhood to fix things and to work on things and come together. When we talk about unity,
Right.
how do you build unity? You build it around people and helping to solve the problems. And so I think that neighborhood revitalization is probably a big part of urban planning as well.
Okay. I said I wanted to also, you touch on your personal story a little bit.
Yes.
If I could, we wanted to kind of move more in that direction. Talking a little bit about the fact that you grew up in this area.
Yes.
But you've also had a journey along the way as you developed, you became successful in business, as you were trained along the way, as your own, I guess, I don't want you to share anything you don't want to, but your faith informed a lot of that journey as well. I'm
Yes.
hoping you'll kind of talk us a little bit about how you went from, okay, I'm a young man, you're branching out in life, to now you're into an area where you're looking at responsibility for the 8th largest city in Alabama.
Right.
So where can you take us from A to B?
Well, iron does sharpen iron,
Okay.
and I think that our stories are our testimonies to our lives and to our faith walk, our sanctification journey, as they say, and moving forward. And I have been blessed that I've had a good God that has had me in His hands when I was not where I needed to be in my maturity and as a young man and coming up and making decisions about things that are extremely important. And so a lot of times it takes a bump in the road to rattle you a little, to say, maybe my self-introspection hadn't been as fine-tuned as it needed to be. And so I think that, somewhere around 39 or 40, my world was, shaking pretty good.
Okay.
And my faith and belief in I need to be in the Word daily
Okay.
has been what has helped me to be in a better place with my relationship with God and my relationship with my spouse and my relationship with my family and my relationship with the community.
Okay.
I think that everything that we are taught in Scripture teaches us to serve,
Right.
and you don't start out being a servant leader. You start out being a servant in your community.
Right.
To
Okay.
put you in a position of leadership. You don't say, "Hey, I wake up in one day and just want to be the mayor or commissioner or the CEO of a company."
Right.
You need to serve in some capacity
Beware
somewhere.
the person that wants to jump to the front of the line.
Absolutely.
Right.
You know, you need to be leery of that because it's that journey. It's that helps us along the way to serve in different aspects of your community. And so that's been a big part of my life in getting me to where I am. I feel like that I am where God wants me to be.
Okay.
And that's important to me. I don't want to be out of that. As we mentioned, you said sweet spot earlier. I don't want to be out of that sweet spot because I am a better mayor. I'm a better man, husband, father when I'm there. So I do think when people talk about leadership, I think you really need to be on that path of serving first. My father, who's passed some years back and was mayor for 8 years here in Dothan.
Okay.
He had this ritual that with his 3 kids. I'm the youngest of 3, and even when he passed, and I was in my late 50s, early 50s, well, my early mid 50s when he passed. Up to that point, he had this tradition of he would keep notes on his 3 children, and he would things that he would keep on a paper. And then when he got up about 8, 9, or 10 notes, he would call you in his office, and we would have a sit down, and he would discuss those with us. Okay. Even at 55.
Right.
And so, you would think at some point, well, golly, isn't that too old? But he had a wisdom that I didn't have. And one of the things that he had on there, I'll just name 3 or 4. One was continue to establish a great relationship with your brother and your sister.
Okay.
Your family.
Right.
Family was important to him, extremely important to him. Continue to serve in the community in some capacities,
right.
and make sure that you're doing that. And the other was to, at some point, please consider running for either commissioner and or mayor of the city.
Now, when was he mayor?
He was mayor from 89 to 97.
Okay.
And so he started our construction and real estate company. My brother, who's older than me, who has had the biggest part of us being successful, is a big part of our company. And he and I, ran the company while Dad was downtown because it's a full-time job. But we have been blessed with a good leader in our father and my mother, who was very strong faith-based as well.
Well, it sounds like he was very attentive and
yes.
knew. Gosh, in our culture today, we would kill for more parents that were that attentive to their children,
yes.
right? I like the fact that you see your responsibility that you've taken on as being in the midst of a story.
Sure.
When I teach for the University of Houston, sometimes I will give an assignment for students, and I'll ask them to write, and this is a writing assignment for them in 3 pages. I said, I want you to share your story. It's like 3 pages. Yeah, I said, except for where you were born starts at the top of page 3. Page 1 is how your grandparents, where they were born, how they grew up, how they met, and had your parents.
Mm-hmm.
Then page 2 is where your parents grew up, where they were born, how they grew up, how they met, and had you. And then you're at the end of that story.
Yes.
And so they come back oftentimes talking about it being a transformative experience.
Sure.
Because they see themselves in the midst of this continuity of God's grace kind of working through their family in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
And in this case, your father wasn't alive to see you become mayor.
Did not.
But I imagine in some cases, there's an old country song, or it may have been a gospel song about I remember, someone would have to look it up for me, but it was an old gospel song about a young man who's was playing in a football game, whose father was blind but could just sit up by the speaker, come to his game and just sit by the speaker and listen for his son's name on whether he was taking the field. And during the course of that song, he says, my father, he says, son, are you glad the coach says, I'm going to send you out to play. He says, thank you, coach. My father passed earlier today and he finally gets to watch me play. And so, of course, it's a tearjerker, and everybody, there's never a dry eye by the time it's done. But nevertheless, there's that sense in which, there's a real satisfaction in being the legacy of those that really raised us well.
Sure.
In that regard. I have the same thoughts about my dad, who's still living now, but the older I get, the more nostalgic I get about my grandparents.
Sure.
That my mom's dad owned a Shell station and was a volunteer firefighter up in Weaverville, California, and so it's the ways in which we're a continuity of our family. It's really satisfying, and you get to do so right here in the town where he did.
Yes.
And so now, tell me about your family, your children. So
I have two older adult children that are 40 and 38.
Okay.
They both live here with their families. In Dothan, the oldest is in our construction company. My son Ben and daughter Abby, who's 38, and she's in our real estate company as well. And then we have a soon-to-be 21-year-old who's at the University of Alabama, just finished his second year, and we have 5 grandchildren from the two older. So. I have been parenting for a long time,
right,
and now grandparenting, and it's been an interesting experience. That is several chapters in the book, and how parenting has changed, and the challenges, from my 48 and 38-year-old to now my 21-year-old has changed, and so That to me is also a big part of our challenges in the community as well.
Right. So creating a space where people would want to have several generations all in one spot.
Absolutely.
So now a town of this size, like we said earlier, Solomon is younger and he's asked, do you want wealth? And he's like, I'd rather have wisdom. And that wisdom that you're bequeathed from your father, but it's also informed by your faith and the experiences of life you had. Even talking about how times even where you're kind of looking up going, God, you're going to be able to redeem this one. Most ministers can relate to that,
right,
because we tend to be passionate about God's grace because we needed it so badly.
Yeah.
But that wisdom, I'm sure, comes really is necessary when times when you're having to manage the affairs of a city, and lo and behold, not everybody has the same cooperation quotient.
Yes. Yes.
Their own interests.
Right.
So how you navigated the personalities? I mean, I know that this is not the place to talk about some of the good, the bad, the ugly.
Right.
But I know that people are people.
Sure.
I remember and minister in church.
Right.
It's people have different motivations for things. It took me a while to realize that it took me a while to realize that how few of the people that say they really liked your sermon actually heard it. And so people are people.
Yeah.
And so you've had to navigate those personalities and public works and major projects and contractors and councilmen and so forth. What are some of the things you've drawn on in order to, navigate those things?
Yes. Well, ironically, my father was extremely intelligent, book sense. My sister and my brother both made, really, really great grades. And then lo and behold, the third one comes along and he's in fourth grade, diagnosed with dyslexia and has learning disabilities and has all kind of challenges. And so through the years, that was the one thing that when I would read, about Solomon and asking for wisdom, I thought, this is something I can ask for, is wisdom.
Right.
And how do you discern and make decisions is important. I think that besides my faith, one of the things that has been helpful for me is, again, when I got out of college, I came to work with my father in my construction company, and construction challenges you in that way.
Okay.
So as a supervisor on a job site of building homes, you go out to the job and you're dealing with framers and masons
Right.
and different subcontractors. They speak differently. They have different lingo, and they tell different jokes, and they say different things, and they're working out in the hot sun,
Right.
and in the inclement weather, and so their challenges are different, and so you have to be able to communicate with that group in a different way and a different level,
Right.
not intelligent level, but just a different level,
Mm.
because of the you got to be empathetic and compassionate to the fact that they are doing hard work.
Right.
You have engineers and architects and those that are the brainier side of our business, and that are telling you how to design things, and then they come to us and our subcontractors and they say, this is how we want you to do it, and we'll say, well, that doesn't necessarily work on, it may work on paper, but it may not work
Right.
out here. And so communicating with them. Then you got a home buyer and owner that's really vested, financially into this, and they're extremely, passionate about what they're doing here, and it means a lot to them, and so you got to communicate differently with them. You never know when you go on a construction site what you're going to encounter.
Right.
Not only in the people groups and the communication, but materials not showing up. Somebody's sick. This framer wasn't able to get here. We're delayed. There's always something roadblock that's thrown in your way. And most people's jobs are a lot like that, but being the mayor is a lot like that.
Right.
And so you don't know any given day when you go in what you're going to deal with, and what is the best strategy. So I do think that there is training that helps you with learning discernment skills, and what is wise and what's not. And my father was a great listener. It's out of the book of James.
Right.
You should listen a lot more than you speak.
Right. My dad used to say, "Son, God gave you one mouth and two ears as a hint."
Yes, it's a great hint, and he made the time for people, and he listened to them. And when they walked out of that room, they felt listened to, and felt like that he had given them his best, and that's important.
In the national conversation about government, I'm not immune to debates about government philosophy and what's in the news and so forth. And I know that for many people, we talk about what we think are good remedies
Right.
for the people's interaction with their government on a national level. I mean, we obviously think about the state and the county and the city level, but at the national level, it seems to me sometimes we have just a disproportionate number of those in government who that's all they've ever done,
Mm-hmm.
versus those who started out working with their hands
Mm-hmm.
amongst difficult people
Mm-hmm.
in the sun,
Mm-hmm.
and they learn people skills and discernment that way, and then we'll entrust you with larger things.
Sure.
After that. And I think that that would be a remedy for quite a bit of the challenges we face.
Yeah. Well, and I've had these discussions over the last 8 years with employees that have worked, just for a municipal government all of their life.
Right.
And you get tinted and colored with the things that happen in your life and the things you have to do every day.
Right.
And who the people, us humans, that we have to deal with each other. And so a lot of times the challenge with, I think, with municipal and or federal, state, government employees is they get a lot of people that are coming in that they don't like to be told no. They don't want to be told another rule or regulation. They come in later, and that's the old, hey, we'd rather ask for forgiveness than ask for permission. And so they get inundated with all of that all the time. And so it makes them, I think, challenges them to really then, sit back and think, the shoe on the other foot.
Right.
How would I want to be treated? Now, everybody has that in every job. And so I think that whole just putting yourself in someone else's shoes makes a lot of sense.
That was one of the big lessons I got from my father, because he retired deputy director of science for the California Bay Delta Authority. He was a water engineer, and he'd been numerous different conferences. He'd been really well respected in his field. And when I asked him what were some of the favorite parts of his job, it typically was, he'd say, putting on my boots, going out, standing in the middle of a farm with a farmer to talk about irrigation and how much water does he need versus how much can he let continue to go down the stream for his neighbor? And that's because that person's dealing with survival. He's dealing with things like this, and you're out in the dirt, and that's the earthy aspects of the job. And it always was. He said that was some of the most fulfilling times. And I think that there's in Christian ministry, I felt the same way, where there have been times when you could be more stay in the study and you could just do everything in the four walls. But my most fulfilling times always was being out amongst people who they're dealing with the things of life.
Yeah.
And you've gone through that with them.
Absolutely.
You understand where they're coming from as well.
Yeah.
You've been able to kind of walk. What's the old Steve Martin quote? If you before you criticize a man, walk a mile in his shoes, because then when you criticize him, you'll be a mile away and have his shoes.
Yeah.
But I mean that's the idea of seeing it through that other person's eyes.
Absolutely, and it's more personal, and I think that's the part that you're speaking to as well. Is that when you're talking about someone and again just being empathetic and compassionate. And understanding about what it is that why they're sitting in front of me. Why are they mad? Why don't we search for that first? Who knows why we are where we are? I think we're a little more divisive now as a nation, and it hurts my heart.
Passionate, definitely.
And so I think that we got to seek that middle ground again and find a better way to solve the topics and issues that challenge us.
So I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but I do have one more thing I'd like to talk about. So you've had one term or two?
Two.
You've had two.
Yes.
You're running for re-election.
That's correct.
And so aside from just keeping the job, what are specific things that you'd say, in this next term, I'm running for re-election because I want to continue XYZ projects and jobs and things that just need to need that continuity of leadership.
Sure.
What are some of those things?
So, one, I would say that we are in a great place for economic developments, and I don't worry about them as much because they seem to be coming pretty steadily now. The formulas that not only myself and our commission over the last 8 years, but others before us, we're standing on the shoulders of giants, and so I think that we're in a place where we're in a good place with economic development and workforce development. So number one, I think that's comforting. Number two, we have started some projects, some in the downtown area and the revitalization as well in some of the other parts of the city that I would like to at least see what can get done over the next 4 years, so that it doesn't roll back and it continues to roll forward.
Okay.
Secondly or thirdly, I would say that there are two pieces. The quality of life is I think is important to me now, because we do have the other pieces of the formula I think in place, and that is pouring as much resources as we can into our youth.
Okay.
Children and youth from kindergarten and pre-K on through high school. They're coming out. And whether they're in our public school system, whether they are our youth that are homeschooled or independent or faith-based schools or college preparatory schools, all of our youth, they are our future, and they're a part of who we are, and I think it's just extremely important that we spend more time figuring out what is the best way to help them be the very best that they can be.
Okay.
I think all cities, everyone, everywhere, no matter what the size of the city is, they want to feel safe.
Right.
And not only walking around, safe and crime safe, but my drinking water is good.
Right.
My emergency response is good, from the fire department, from the EMTs, from the ambulances, from the police department, and whatever that might be, the services that you expect. I think that's extremely important, and I want to make sure that we are headed in that direction.
I remember when all the Los Angeles fires that were taking place around New Year's, and an exacerbated reporter at one point basically just broke the objectivity and said, just put their hand on the desk and says, I really only need 4 basic things from my city: police, fire, water, roads.
Mm-hmm.
And there's much more that we do.
Absolutely.
But he's like, if you can't keep the basic four, what else is going on?
It's what I always call when I explain it, especially to youth and younger people.
Mhm.
That really municipal government is, there are some basics of municipal government,
Right. Mm-hmm.
and we are a service industry, and it is. That's
Yes.
some of the basics. There's other topics that, of course, and that you have to deal with and want to deal with.
Right.
But if you can't do those right,
Right.
you're not going to be able to do it. You're not going to grow.
Well, and specific, some of those are absolutely, well, again, those are why they're the basic four. And my hope is that I'll be able to have a conversation like this, maybe at some point with Chief Williams or maybe
Chief
not
Kenny.
Chief Williams, but someone from the fire department, because I have a very great passion for our first responders.
Yes.
I'm very persuaded that they make careers out of praying, about answering prayers that we constantly pray all the time.
Right.
And so, but specific for the upcoming election, when is it again?
August 5th.
That's coming up August 5th.
Right.
National statistics remain lamentable that seemingly far more people will show up for national elections than they do local ones.
Right.
And that really has just always gotten under my skin, because the more localized the government, the more we interact with it.
Sure.
And I'm very, very passionate that any given Christian needs to have a strong opinion about how good policy is enacted, because it either enables human flourishing or it exacerbates human suffering.
Yes.
One of those two.
Sure.
So and since that's the government that we interact with the most locally, that's where the passion should begin and then work its way out from there. Unfortunately, national news cycles tend to make people more excited for November than they do August.
Yes.
And we'd like to be able to, I don't know how we'll influence the reversal of that trend. But my hope is that people will be passionate about the local communities, because that's where they experience the blessing of God the most.
Yes.
In terms of how, making order out of the chaos and wisdom applied to, all these services that we have causes the greatest human flourishing. And that's where we experience it the most.
Well, it's when we like to talk about in local government and in our communities, building unity and building community, and that's done one person at a time, person to person. You don't affect social change without personal interaction, and that's what our faith is about. It's what being a good disciple is about, and I think that's what being a good servant leader is about.
Thank you very much for coming and taking the time to talk to me.
My pleasure.
And it's a joy. And everyone I've encountered so far at City Hall are the most friendliest people. And I think my wife even commented, she's like, Alabama, it may just be an Alabama thing. I mean, Florida was wonderful, but the moment we cross the state line, every business we go to is always going to say, have a blessed day. And we're experiencing that Southern hospitality that I used to long ago just attributed to the mountains of Northern California. I didn't even realize what I was in for when I came here to the Southeast. It's been wonderful.
Well, it's a blessing to have you here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for being in our city.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.